Hi, everyone, and welcome back to A Millennial Mind. Today, I am so excited to introduce you all to the founder of the Blindian Project. So, hi, Jonah, how are you?
Hello, Shivani. Thank you for having me on the Millennial Mind today. I'm so excited for this. Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you. Thank you for coming on it for, I think, the third time. So, we've had technical issues, question issues, loads of issues. So, Jonah, I am so appreciative of you coming on again to talk to me about interracial relationships. So, let's start with a bit of an introduction into the Blindian Project and yourself.
Sure. So my name is Jonah Batambuze. I'm a multidisciplinary creative. Means I dabble in a lot of different things, from writing to exhibitions to a bit of painting, artwork, and things like that. Um, I am Ugandan American. I was born in the States. My parents fled Uganda in '75 because of Idi Amin and went to the States looking for a better life. I grew up in the Midwest and spent about 20 years in the U.S. and I got to this point in time in my life where I wanted an adventure and I wanted to just explore the world. And I took an opportunity to study abroad in Dublin, Ireland, and that's where I met my South Asian wife, Sveta. Um, so that's where
Amazing.
the story kind of takes a different turn. And Sveta's born in Guntur. She's Telugu. Spent some time in India. Then obviously came over with her parents. They're both medics, and they were doing their training in the UK. So she just happened to be visiting one of her friends who lived in my dormitory, and we met in my local pub, which was all very romantic.
Amazing. So, why did you found the Blindian Project?
Sure. So we got married in 2007. I'd say it was probably about 10 years post that time. Never met
Mm-hmm.
another couple that looked like us or really interacted with
Mm-hmm.
another couple like us. I was taking a trip with the family to India, and I read an Al Jazeera article about African students getting beaten up by street mobs in New Delhi. Never really thought about
Mm-hmm.
anti-blackness being a contributing factor to why there weren't that many of our relationships, but I came back
Mm-hmm.
and decided to put a call to action together and asked other couples to share their story. And that was really the initial like launch of the Blindian Project. I was calling it the
Yeah.
Blindian Project at that time, but I think there were 10 couples from around the world that submitted their stories, and I just basically put it out in the world, really. And it resonated with people, and I think it was a space that people hadn't seen before. So people were really, really excited
Definitely.
about it. I neglected it at that point in time. I think oftentimes we create things or we do things and don't really know the impact that they can have on people or communities. So I went on and I went to,
100%.
to writing my next story, and it wasn't until the beginning of 2020 that I thought, I'm spreading myself too thin. I think this a lot of creatives go through this point in time when you're doing too many different things. You're trying to write a book. You're trying to do this. You're trying to do a bit of pushing yourself and your brand, and you don't really make
Yeah,
much progress because it's not focused. So I made an effort at the
definitely.
beginning of 2020. Let's focus on something, and that was the Blindian project for me.
Well, I love the project. I say too had that reaction when I saw your page that wow, this is such an incredible platform you've created to share so many incredible stories. And I want to go into that. But one of the things you touched on was, you don't really see a lot of interracial couples. And I think one of the reason for that is because of the caste system, right? So a lot of people in India, I think it's 88% of people still have arranged marriages, and
Mm.
66% of people only meet people around the day or on the day of the day they get married. And the reason for having these arranged marriages is to basically allow you to marry within your caste. For as long as I've known, marrying outside your caste or your community or your race or your religion is still seen to be a taboo. And I think that's one of the problems that roots back to the caste system and roots back to colonialism, is that we've created this social hierarchy almost that people still adhere to. Now, what was your experience with this when you met your wife?
Well, in regards to cast, I mean, there was no,
Mhm.
I mean, that wasn't even a topic of conversation that we touched on really. Like I said, I didn't actually even really get into the whole topic of anti-blackness till about
Mhm.
2017. I had never dated a South Asian or Indian woman before, so that was completely new to me. I probably studied with less than five South Asian Indian people growing up, and didn't really have any in-depth conversations with them. So um, just that in itself was a big thing for me, and just really opened my eyes and perceptions up to a much broader world. But we no caste system, we never really sat down and explicitly talked about it because it didn't equate to me and what I was
Yeah.
bringing to the table. Probably would have
Yeah,
just been
definitely.
another conversation where I might have been like, "What? You what? Huh?" So yeah,
I'm sure
that
you've
did
had a
not
lot
fly.
of those moments.
Yeah, yeah, we've had some fun, interesting times, but no, caste did not really come into the equation for us.
What about when you say anti-blackness? I want to explore that a little bit because I think people who are listening or watching this may not really understand that term and how deep rooted it is.
Anti-blackness for me, it doesn't even need to be necessarily geared towards black people. It's almost this
Hmm.
concept or this thought of the color black or being dark or being darker, which comes back to the whole colorism bit. I think you kind
Yeah.
of mentioned some of the key points earlier when you spoke. Um, I think about the caste system. I think about Brahmins and people at the top being able to stay inside and kind of maintain this fair skin, where you have people on the lower side of the caste system who were meant to work
Hmm.
outside, which obviously meant that their skin got tanned. As melanated
Yeah.
people, they got darker, and that's kind of where you start to see this divide of what does it mean to be light skinned, white, pure, and this other one to be dark skin and just maybe kind of like a feeling of dirtiness and things like that. So,
Yeah.
caste system was there. The British came, colonization came along. They saw a system that they could, that was already kind of separating people and dividing people. So
Mm.
they took it to a different level and therefore made that certain castes could only receive certain jobs. And that just
Yeah.
kind of built into this whole social hierarchy and this feeling that, being light or white or closer to the people who are the oppressor is better, and the darker that you are, kind of casts you to the shadows. Um, I'd say the last kind of
Interesting.
things that we studied from there was uh, media portrayal. And when I say media, that could be Bollywood, right? So
Yes.
that could be Bollywood's portrayal of what it means to have all of the role star, the leading female stars to be light skinned, and not seeing darker skinned people. And even from some of the stuff that I've seen, even just the way that it kind of plays out in some of the movies and stuff. Like
Hmm.
I know, for example, there's a show Fashion, and I think it was Priyanka Chopra, and she has this moment in
Hmm.
time when she is going off the rails, and her going off the rails
Right.
kind of culminates in her waking up next to a black man. So um, we have the
Mm.
media portrayal in Bollywood sense, but we also have the media portrayal from a U.S. kind of Western sense, where by black people often aren't portrayed in the they're not usually lauded for their achievements and the great things that they've done is mostly around negative type things,
Definitely.
crime, criminality, fatherlessness, and things like that.
And I think what you've touched on there is, we'll see that from Bollywood. So people who are living in the UK or the US will see that from, the things that they watch culturally. And then they'll go onto the news and they'll see all the other things as well. So those things in tandem really actually like lead to that anti-blackness or almost push it, right? But
A
some of the
hundred
things
percent.
you touched on there, yeah, and some of the things you touched on there, like colorism, is still rampant in India, right? And it's still very, I think, present in the Western world as well, right? So half of the skin products in India are based around skin lightening. People are obsessed with it, and actually, I've noticed that. And it was actually when I went to India last year that I was in a salon and I was getting my nails done, and there was this guy who was with his son, and he said, "Oh, he's just having a skin lightening cream because he's been playing cricket." Now, it wasn't an unusual thing. It was just a typical day for the
Mm.
parlor to actually perform this treatment. I've never seen anyone go through that actually because I've grown up in a family where typically our skin has been quite light. So we've never really had those comments or, pressures to put those skin lightening creams on. And to be honest, even within my family or extended friends and family, I've never really seen anyone use it. So I was quite shocked when I was in that beauty salon seeing this 12-year-old boy being plastered. And it was almost like a cream. It was like a cream that
Yeah.
it looked like shaving cream. I thought he was having his whole face shaved, but
Yeah.
it was
Well.
actually a lightening cream.
Yeah. I would like. So I can kind of. So I can see skin lightening cream. Like sometimes you could have bad acne, right? You have blemishes, right?
Mhm.
And maybe you're trying to even your skin tone out, which
Yeah,
I personally don't really think that I have much of an issue with that. But in that case, where the kid had just been simply playing outside, it's a tan. Tans go away, right? Tans
exactly.
will tans will go away in the matter of like a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So um, the fact that it was so extreme to the sense of you've been out in the sun, now we need to get rid of it immediately, just speaks volumes, really. It just
100%.
speaks volumes
And
into
also,
the issue.
And also, having a tan shouldn't be a bad thing. And that's, I think, what we're trying to identify. We're living in India and you've been fed this message that having darker skin is a negative thing. You know, you look at the billboard models, you look at the people who are in Bollywood, like you say, you know, there's this thing around Bollywood brown face as well. It's seen to be a negative thing to have darker skin. So when a child gets a tan, it's almost like, oh my gosh, we need to rush and get rid of it almost immediately, like you just said. But what I want to talk about as well, and you mentioned this last time, is Bollywood brownface. So we've talked around, you know, the negative impact it's having within the Indian community living in the US and UK. What is Bollywood brownface?
Yeah, so brownface. There was a CNN article earlier, 2020. Brownface was essentially when you need a character who is of darker skin, and instead
Mm-hmm.
of going out to the multiple people that you could go out to who are brown skinned, you say, you know what, let me go for someone who's lighter skin, and I'll just have them apply some darker skin tone to them, right? So I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to do much work. Let me go with somebody who's tried and tested, and get them to darken their skin a bit. And it's just lazy. It's just lazy. It's saying that we don't want to diversify the people that we work with, give other people a chance, and so we're going to go with this light skinned person, and we'll just give them a tan. It'll be fine. I
Yeah,
mean, for me, brown face similar to black face. Just don't be lazy. Just go out and find the people.
exactly. Definitely. And another thing, you know, I want to touch on is the phrase BMW. I think that's coined around a lot within the Indian community. And I just want to explore a bit about what that means and why it's so toxic.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people South Asia. I mean, a lot of South Asian people will already know. I mean, I'm kind of inserted into this story later, but it's very much this black, Muslim, white. It
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, you know, it's almost side by side with this skin colorism thing. Like as a young age, people may be used to hearing, "Don't go out in the sun, don't play too long out there
Yeah.
because you're going to get darker skin." And I think this is another thing that's also told to people because they've told me that people kind of being conditioned that you shouldn't marry outside of the race or
Yeah.
the culture, but if you do, this is the order. And black, Muslim, and white is kind of the reverse order because, again,
Mm-hmm.
it's back to the colonization and everything we talked about earlier. White is kind of closer to what is good. If you can't marry a white
Mm-hmm.
person, okay, we might go to a Muslim person, and last but not least, don't let it be a black person. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just I mean, it's pretty disgusting to be fair, because
Mm-hmm.
as kids we don't really know what is right and what is wrong, nor
Yep.
have the voice or the ability to speak up to our parents, and sometimes here they are trying to basically program us to start thinking, black is wrong, black is bad.
Mm-hmm.
There's something wrong with black. There's something wrong with actually even dating outside of your race, or your culture.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And I think the term often is used, like you say, in that reverse order. And for me, I think, you know, I've never seen a South Asian girl within my community with a black person, right? I've never seen an interracial relationship between South Asian people and black people. Now, I have friends who are with people who are black, but actually, I'm not exposed to it at all. You know, I've never seen
mm,
anybody in my family, I've never seen anybody within my community, I've never seen anyone that I know closely. And so, you know, when I was exposed to my friend who had a black boyfriend, I was like, oh, that's different. Okay. And you know, I think it's about
when was
sometimes
that? How old were you when that happened? I mean,
maybe
when did
four
that
years
happen?
ago, three years ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So But it wasn't like it's a bad thing. That I don't think it's ever been within my family for people to tell me things are good and bad. I have been told, it's easier to marry within your culture. It's easy to marry within your community because you have the same values, you have the same ethics, you know the same religions, you know about the same gods. But my argument always is that half the people within my community have no idea. They don't speak they don't speak the same language. They don't know anything about the festival. So if I'm going to have to teach it to someone within my community, then I can teach it to someone who's in another community, right? That's the way I look at it. So, however,
It's a
at the
good point.
same
Yeah,
time,
it's a really really good point. Sorry to cut you off, but I had someone asking me that the other day as well too, and it was like they say that I'm making my parents, as in they, are saying that I'm
mm,
making things harder for myself, and I said
yeah,
harder by whose
by
standards, and
why?
harder for who?
Exactly.
Like, is it harder for you or is it harder for them? Because um, oftentimes when I think about this and I hear people making comments about it, it's like, um, how could she disrespect her family that way? And I'm thinking, well, disrespect them in what way? What has she done? Well,
Exactly.
she's fallen for a black guy or a black woman. Like, okay, yeah, they're falling in love. What's the matter? Well, yeah, but the parents won't like it. Well, why won't they like it? Well, because and the more you dig into it, the more you just ask yourself, like, well, actually, what is wrong, and why should it be disrespectful for somebody to fall in love with somebody? What's wrong with that?
Jonah, the questions you're asking there and actually going into like, but why, but why, but why, you actually get to the crux of it and there's no reason. It's literally the way
Mm,
we've been conditioned to think that we shouldn't marry someone who's outside of our race and our caste. And back to my point of, when people say to me, oh, well, Shavanya, you're going to find it really difficult if you marry somebody who isn't Indian or isn't in my community. Half the people I've dated within my community were really different. And it was very difficult for
mm,
me to explain half the things I did because they didn't understand, because they didn't speak Gujarati, they weren't religious, they didn't really understand the festivals, they didn't really celebrate them. So I was kind of having to teach them anyway. So for me, if I were to fall in love with somebody who was from a different race or a different culture, I wouldn't see it as a negative thing at all, right? So
100%,
that's
100%.
my opinion, and I understand that I'm privileged enough to have the resources to learn about these things. And I've come from a family that isn't so traditional, like you have to marry somebody that's Indian. I think my mum does say it to me sometimes, like you do have to, but then I'm always like, well, I don't. And she's never like, well, I'll disown you. It's always just like, okay,
Mm,
so I think it's a
mm,
preference to them, and I think the reason why it's a preference to people is because it's all that they know, right? So,
exactly.
the reason why people are more comfortable perhaps with people marrying somebody who's white is because they see it a lot more. They're aware of it a lot more. We see a lot more people who are married to people who are white or Muslim. And that's why I think your platform is so incredible, because you're highlighting that there are people who are married who are South Asian and black. And so you only start to be comfortable with things once you start to see them. And because your platform does that, I think it allows people to not feel like it's a strange thing or a different thing. We need to start making it more normalized to create interracial relationships.
Sure. Yeah. Well, one of our missions is to normalize, Black and South Asian relationships. So, you've hit it on the head right there. I, um, One thing that I found really interesting throughout this journey is that, we had these workshops that we were providing to people, and one of the workshops was about introducing your partner to your parents, and I noticed like there
Mm-hmm.
were several people from India who were logging onto these calls, and actually talking about their experiences, and they weren't in blending relationships. They were not in blending
Mm-hmm.
relationships. They were in intercaste or interfaith relationships, and there was no outlet for
Yes.
them to actually be able to voice what was going on, and get feedback on it. And it connected with our movement and what
Mm-hmm.
we were doing, and that's why it resonated with them. So I just thought that was really, really beautiful and just really powerful to say, look, this isn't just for Black and South Asian people. You don't have to actually be in a blending
Yes.
relationship. You could just be wanting to know more about the experience. You may want to know more about, interracial relationships. You may just want to educate yourself, right? And it's for
Yeah.
everybody. Obviously, we are creating it for our communities, but at the same point in time, we're not excluding anybody from being able to learn from the beautiful messages.
I love that. And I think, some people listening or watching this may say, well, how common is it at the moment? We're living in the 21st century. People aren't, well, the statistic I said was in India that 88%
Mm.
of people were forced to have, not forced, but 88% of people were in arranged marriages. But, in the Western world, how common is it? Are people really going through these struggles of, managing to have interracial relationships? I just want to know from your perspective, and you can share some of the stories or some of the things that people are struggling with still in this day and age, because it shouldn't be a problem that people are going through, right? And I think some people think it isn't. So some people will be thinking, well, I don't know how relevant this topic is for today's society when we're allowed and we have so much freedom to do what we want.
Yeah, so just a couple things I'll mention. So I have people who are married to white, because I think everyone will agree, it's usually easier to marry the white male or the female, right? If you're Daisy, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
South Asian, then
For
versus
sure.
another part, and that comes back to the whole BMW thing. So I've had people who are in relationships with white people saying that they wish a platform like mine existed for them.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about that, I think like, what are you talking about? But at the same point in time, the fact that they're actually even saying it's difficult for them to marry white people lets me know that there is somewhat of an issue there. You know, um,
Mm-hmm.
people seem to think sometimes that, oh, you're in the West, everybody's progressive and liberal in these open attitudes. I mean, as of last year, 2020, there were two stories that really impacted me about women who, one of them was sent back to India to basically stop her
Mm-hmm.
relationship. You know, the family intimidated her, they manipulated her, and they eventually
I
coerced her
remember this.
to get on a one-way trip to India, right, to get her away from her partner. And
Um,
I don't know if many people
mm-hmm.
would envisage that as something happening in the West. 6 months prior to that, there was a girl who was dating a black man, and she ran away. She ran away from the house and the family. She had no other hope, and that was her last option that she had. A third party
Mm-hmm.
organization got involved, and a couple days later, she turns up at home. So, kind of no statement about the boyfriend or anything like that. But just the fact that people are having to go through this type of trauma at young ages, 23, 25,
Yeah.
even younger than that, getting disowned, getting thrown out of the house, getting told they're no longer, part of the community, and just receiving abusive messages. It's a lot. It's a lot for something
It is.
as natural as just falling in love with somebody who's different than you.
I think one of the things you do on the Blindian Project is you have a lot of these Instagram lives, and I remember tuning into that Instagram live. I think it's the same example,
It
the one
was.
where that girl was shipped off to India and she was manipulated to think that her cousin had cancer or something, and then so he was like, "Just come back to India and help me." And she went under the pretense that she was going to be back in a couple of months, and then her phone just cut off, right? And then they couldn't get in touch with her, and she was sending messages, but they knew that they weren't her because she was just saying, "I'm fine," dot, or "Leave me alone, don't talk to me." And the boyfriend who was here was actually really worried and really distraught. And, stories like that, they broke my heart because I just think that why are we still facing this stigma and these taboos of having interracial relationships within the 21st century, right? It's ridiculous. We should not be having conversations to break off or run away or not be part of our family just because we fall in love with someone who has a different skin color than us, right? And I think the Black Lives Matter movement last year really helped people to question the bias against dark skin. Fair and Lovely, I think, changed their
Mm.
name to
Glow and Lovely or something ridiculous
I don't
like
know what.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something else, but the product is still there. The concept, the why behind the product is still there. The name may have changed, but the why is still there. But I think people are now speaking out a bit more, and questioning, or just unbreaking this whole anti-blackness and breaking that down as to why we have these stereotypes and stigmas. What are some of the things we can do in the Asian community to be better allies? And what are some of the things you're doing with the Blindian Project at the moment?
Sure. So better allies. I think it's important to know being an ally happens differently
Mhm.
for everybody, right? You may not jump in head first and all of a sudden you're at protests and things like that. You don't need to do that. Being an ally can be as simple as showing of support for your immediate
Yeah.
brother or sister, or even a relative who you may know who's in one of those relationships. Um, One thing you've mentioned is I think before our platform there was it's been a very isolating experience when you don't have a community and you don't have people who can relate to what you're actually
Definitely.
going through. So one thing a lot of people say is I wish this platform existed 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And it's because you're able to see other people and other couples who look like you, who have been successful, and who are just kind of living their best lives. And it gives you hope that that's something that you can have as well too.
Definitely.
So back to your question about being a good ally. So I think ally comes in a lot of different shapes. It could be just being supportive for your friend. It could be donating money. It could be attending some protests,
Mhm.
marches. It could actually even be um, uplifting a
Yeah.
person of color, right? You could actually work in your job and you could be a manager and you could say, you know what, there is a person of color over there and I'm actually going to uplift
Mhm.
them. I'm going to give them the opportunity to pick up a
Yeah.
different skill, right? Because that is uplifting them. So there are many different ways that you can do it. It's not all about holding a placard at a march and being frontline. There are a lot of ways you can do it without making yourself super uncomfortable. I don't think that example I provided around the workplace and helping to promote somebody is out of the
Mhm.
question. That's it, really. Just being supportive of it for the right reason and for the genuine reason. Instead of, I think what we're seeing now as well too is we're seeing a lot of kind of performative allyship, which is um, people, they have the black square on their IG page, and then they're done, right?
No
That's
raised
that's all the activism
conversations. Yeah,
actually
they never
means for
speak
them.
up. Hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah. Or you have some people that are might say, we supported Black Lives Matter. Where's your support for the
Hmm.
farmers movement? Thinking that you support somebody else when they've supported you. And now it's kind of a tit for tat. And hey, I did that for you. Now you
Hmm.
do this for us, right? Um, so there are a lot of things to think
Hmm.
about with it, but there are a lot of also ways that you can positively be involved with it. What we are doing as a Blindian Project, one of our main things is creating spaces to have difficult conversations, creating spaces for us to fall in love with one another, creating spaces to learn from one another, and it's usually centered around things where we have commonalities. So it could be around literature, so it could be a book club, it could be a writing group, it could be around music, it could be around food, things that are present in both of our communities and we can kind of relate to. They resonate with us. Um, the last thing I'll mention is we have a book coming out at the end of March. It's called When We See
Amazing.
Ourselves. So it's got 10, I call them flavors of kind of
Hmm.
Blindian love stories. So you'll have a story in there about anti-blackness. You'll have a LGBTQ plus story. You'll have a story about Islamophobia. And so it's a book with artwork, but it's also like a
Hmm.
workbook as well too. So it is asking you to interact with it and reflect on what you just read, right?
Amazing.
So it could be a question, could be list 3 biases that you have about Islam,
Hmm.
right? But it comes out end of March. Really, really excited about it.
I am
We'll have a
too.
lot of stuff on our platform and conversations, and just looking forward to releasing that. Really, the
I'm
stories
really
have been
excited for that.
something that a
That's
lot of
going to be
people
amazing.
have. Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And really hard work, well done. And one of the things I actually thought about while you were talking that you mentioned was, the thing that I see on your platform is that you see that blending couples can be happy and it's a platform for joy and to share good stories, right? And I think something that we're told from a young age is that, if you marry someone outside of your race or your caste, you're not going to be happy, right? You'll never be truly happy because you'll have so many arguments with your kids about which religion to follow and what language to speak and what food to eat and all of these things, which I think are ridiculous, but it's something that people are told a lot. And so I love that you share that on your platform because, like I said before, there's a lot of people within your race or your culture who will have those difficulties with even then, right? So typically what somebody always says to me is that, yeah, but you're vegetarian and a lot of people who aren't Indian won't be vegetarian. And I'm like, a lot of people who are Indian aren't vegetarian. So, categorizing these things based on race and culture are just ridiculous to me, and stereotyping those things just prove to have no value. But before we, how would you like to change the Indian expectation on interracial relationships?
I've seen so much. I've seen so much and just heard so much pain, trauma, agony, anxiousness.
Mm-hmm.
I've even had stories from people who say, 15 years ago I had this relationship, and here I am at 40, and obviously they're still thinking about the person because they're writing about it, right? So um, I just want people to be free. I just want people to be free to love who they want to love. Again, as I said it before, this is something natural that happens. Sometimes you can't stop it. You may just see somebody or randomly run into someone at the bus stop, and um, a spark flies, and naturally, organically, you're in love. And I just want people to be free. And it's outside of just love. Even it's to things that I see
Mm-hmm.
women, especially in the South Asian community, just trying to break out of a shell. Really, be able to be independent, be able to
Yeah.
be their own person, be able to date before marriage. Um, just do some of these
Yes.
things that I
Yes.
feel should be normal. Um, I mean, it could be wrong for me to say that, but from what I see, even people in India like want to be dating, or they are dating, prior to marriage. People are just moving with the times, and I think we just need
Mm-hmm.
to move with the times, be flexible with the times, and um, that I just want people to be free, really.
I love that. And I just love your page. And I'm so excited for the book. And I just want to thank you so
You.
much for doing this podcast with me. I'm so honored to have you as a guest on my show. And I can't wait to see what the project holds for you in the future.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for having us. Thank you for letting us share our story on
Anytime.
your platform and speak with your community. And I hope there are people in your community that are very thankful for you talking about this and bringing this subject up, and just helping them get through some of the issues they may be facing.
I hope so too. And thank you again, Jonah. See you soon.
Thanks. Cool.